This is me, Kavanagh-Thomas. I'm a body and mindset business coach, and I help business women heal their best self so they can achieve their ultimate health, business, and life. Today, we are on the social media switch off interview with the beautiful Chelsea Carter. And Chelsea, I tell you what, I've got so much to say about you. United Nations, human rights. You were interviewing torture survivors. You're doing a master's at this moment in neuroscience. You're doing like loads of stuff. You speak 3 languages as well because you've traveled so much. And then you in India, you worked in the States. You've got about a bit as well.
Yeah.
But I tell you what, it's so lovely to meet you because, I mean, obviously we met through Julia Ferron's group, wasn't it? And then we've had, a really lovely conversation with each other, and I just could not invite you on here to speak about, what you've been through in terms of PTSD, but also what you do for other women, in particular, especially during this social media switch off, because this is for women who want to take a little bit of time off, want to take a little bit of a break from all the noise that goes on in social media. It's not being against social media, there's so much great stuff from it. But it's to help women, be able to do something while offline, to help them move forward with whatever that is, freedom, joy, happiness, whatever that might be. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you do what you do.
Thank you, first of all, for the introduction. And I'm just happy that we both met, and social media is wonderful in those ways as well. In terms of starting my business as a coach, well, it was kind of after a series of events where I was working at the United Nations and my aunt got sick and my mom got sick and I contracted cancerous cells. So I was one step away from uterus cancer, where I got like a small operation, and then kind of continued on working and eventually just burned out. And after that, I have a friend who passed away from bacterial meningitis. And so I decided that I wanted to live my life fully and kind of make all of my dreams come true. So I enrolled in a coaching program. Before that, I actually ran every single day, started doing yoga, went to go see a therapist, really, really taking care of myself, singing karaoke, all the rest of it. I enrolled in a coaching program after talking to several coaching programs and decided to go on a trip to Asia, where I worked in a nonprofit for women's rights and menstruation. And the reason behind this business is all of what I just said, but also because I had an abortion when I was 20, which led me to get PTSD. And it was really rough because it went on for about 7 years. And at first, I didn't believe in mental health, and look at where I am now. And so after seeing a therapist, finally, after 7 years, who told me, well, you experienced trauma. And she explained kind of what went on in my brain. And after that, I went to go see a therapist in the US after my burnout. And she also helped me a lot. And then I realized, well, I really want to do this. Actually, I really want to help other women with trauma and with PTSD, because once you are in that space and there's no one out there helping you out, it's really difficult because your brain just goes off on itself and it's hard to refocus or feel sane again and peaceful again. And so, yeah, that's pretty much why I'm doing what I do now.
Yeah. And that's so beautiful as well. The fact that, you know, you've gone through those things, and obviously they're such traumatic events, and to come out on the other side to, you know, to help other people, because, you know, I know that there's going to be women who are going to watch this who have been through therapy. I've been through therapy myself, you know, who've been through a lot of mental, you know, say mental health, mind health, you know, a lot of times where we felt like, you know, there's no other way to turn. We don't know what to believe because we have all these thoughts going on in our head, and we're trying to kind of change those thoughts and change them for the better. And sometimes we find it very difficult to do those things, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what's actually so beautiful as well, to be on this journey. And actually that's the name of my coaching program that I enrolled in. It's JRNI, and they taught us anxiety reducing techniques and really tools that you can use in order for you to like feel sane again and peaceful again, and be able to cope with whatever trauma or post-trauma you're experiencing. So it's like I've healed from it, and now I'm giving some of these tools to my clients who can then go away with those tools and kind of work on themselves with them and feel like they have mastery over themselves again, which is huge. So
that's massive. That's someone their own independence, and I think that is so beautiful when it comes to coaching, when it comes to the work that both of us do. It's about, you know, women becoming really independent around, you know, around what they're going through. And you bring really amazing to what you do as well, which is communication. So because I know when we were having a chat, obviously when you did work for United Nations, you know, you were doing a lot of communication work. And that must be a really great skill to have.
Yeah, and I think that's also when I was working at the UN and was interviewing torture survivors and women who had been who had experienced violence, and just pretty much the worst of what humanity can do, between reading about wars and genocide and having to communicate about all these different issues, up down to the electric chair and the death penalty and people with disabilities. And so it's a lot to take in on a daily basis, and having to reword everything and make sure that the communications is absolutely clear. But also, like you said, really it's about empowering people and providing useful information for them, and making sure that people, just as we do in our jobs and as I did at the UN, is to make people feel like they're not alone in what they're experiencing. And in talking to torture survivors, I kind of realized, well, it's amazing to be doing this, but I would want to be on the other side and be part of enabling them to heal and kind of talk about what happened to them in a way where it's therapeutic and not necessarily an interview, even though the interviews are very impactful. And like I said, it's like talking about issues where people on the other side of the world or anywhere else don't even know that these issues are happening. So it's huge.
And that is huge. And that must be, you know, because I feel that sometimes we take those things on, don't we, as human beings, because that's what we are, you know, regardless of being coaches or anything like that. We, you know, and I know that there'll be business women watching this who are coaches and who are going through, you know, who are working with their clients, but then have their own PTSDs triggered sometimes through, you know, the work that they do with other people. And we that sometimes is an occurrence within the brain as well.
Mm.
So what I want to know is, how would you, for those people or for anyone else who's watching this, how would they track the anxiety?
Well, you brought up an important word, which is tracking, and that's actually something that I have my clients do, which is to actually realize when you have the anxiety. So is it when you're at work or down the street or in the subway? And what is causing it? Is it something that someone said? Is it someone near you that seems threatening? And where does the source of it come from? And once we actually manage to track it and kind of realize, okay, I'm having anxiety right now, why? That's already huge, because you're already starting to gain mastery over your anxiety and realizing that you're the one in control up there, even though we may not always feel like that. It is the case.
Yeah. So, because it's like awareness, isn't it? It's just having the awareness, but it's taking that one extra step, wondering where it's come from, and then obviously going to ask why, happening. So when you do your work, for instance, do many people do people just come to you from the internet, or do they get in contact with you via email? How do they get?
It's actually mostly word of mouth, interestingly, even though it's complicated these days with Corona. But at the same time, people who know me basically had sessions with me, and then they recommend people from their families, and then they recommend friends, and that's kind of how it's been growing very naturally. And then I've had a few people who I didn't know, well, more than a few, over the internet as well, mostly social media. But yeah, it's interesting. Word of mouth is actually the biggest one for me.
And I think at this moment in time, there's going to be, a lot of people at this moment in time needing services like what we provide.
Mm-hmm.
By doing videos like this, doing interviews like this, it's going to be massive, because, there are so many women out there who've gone through this pandemic and more or less treated it the same as like an everyday occurrence, still trying to juggle everything, kids, family, work, etc., not realizing that sometimes the reason why they may be so overwhelmed is that they've gone through such a massive thing and they've tried to hold it all together for everyone else.
Yeah.
And it just brings up a lot of stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that Corona, I'm not a mother. I can't really speak for...
Even for those without kids as well.
Yeah. I would imagine that it's a whole different ballgame to have to deal with kids and your work life and balancing everything at home. That's just a huge load of work, which I think at some point, like you said, it's like you're kind of taking everything on. And hopefully there's some men out there who are good dads and husbands and boyfriends who will actually provide, the other half some relief and break. And yeah, I think that, and also just couples who are together as women or men, and because I don't want to omit that either. So yeah, I think that it's been complicated for a lot of people, and on top of that, having to kind of shove down whatever you're feeling and not taking time to process that as you have to deal with everything else, it kind of will bubble up at some point in another way, which is why we really have to try as much as we can to create balance, which is one of the most simplest things to say and one of the hardest ones probably to implement. And just taking those breaks will enable you to work better, more efficiently, and be around with your kids in a healthier way if you and your husband or wife, and if you take care of yourself, even just 10 minutes a day. So it's really important. And seeing someone as well, because whether it's your job or mine, really taking the time with someone to voice what's going on in your head and how you're feeling, and to kind of just relax and take that moment for you. I mean, it's kind of like mind spa. Because
absolutely, because I think that there's a lot of it going on at this moment in time, isn't there? We have a lot on our minds, obviously, with, obviously you're in France and I'm here in the UK, and there's a lot of stuff going on at this moment with what's going on in the world, with the pandemic, with how everyone's feeling, because people don't know how to feel, people don't know how to act. And many of us are acting against our human nature, which is to be together. So it's a very difficult time for people, I feel, but it doesn't have to be difficult if you're what's the word I'm looking for, listening to what your body wants, listening to what your body wants for. What I want to ask you, because this leads really nicely on to coping skills and how to cope in situations and work through negative thoughts, because a lot of people have negative thoughts at this moment in time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of exercises that exist out there. There is one major one, which is simply distraction. Because when we are caught in our own thoughts, we kind of go down that swirl of repetitiveness. And it's something like 85% of our thoughts are negative and 95% of them are repetitive. And this is just, I literally always tell this to my clients, it's human. It's normal that we have these negative thoughts. It's just a matter of finding ways to actually cope with that, like we mentioned. And so distraction is huge. If you simply are having a conversation where you feel anxious, just feeling the ground beneath you will help you kind of relax, or the table surface in front of you, or kind of looking around a room and pointing to different objects and naming them. If you're alone, out loud and with people maybe in your head. But there's techniques like that. And also, of course, reassuring yourself, because it's so easy to fall prey to our critique inside of our head. So kind of approaching, like friending your inner critique, where you kind of go, okay, you're saying these things about me, but I don't really believe that, or I don't really want to have this conversation right now with you. Like, we're a little not crazy, because we say that there's like several voices in people's minds that are considered crazy, which is not the best term to use, but it's not true. Like, we all have kind of different voices in our head. The voice that tells us, you really want that beer? No, you really shouldn't. And it's this kind of duality in our minds. And otherwise, there's also some other techniques like the gremlin, which makes some of my clients laugh, because it's about putting all of your thoughts into an imaginary monster in front of you that you give a name to, and then telling the gremlin to go away. Because you want to rationalize your thoughts. Most of the thoughts we have that are negative are completely irrational. And the reason for that is our brain, because the back part of our brain is our amygdala, and that kind of lights up, which sort of deactivates the other parts of our brain, including our prefrontal cortex, where we have our logic center. And so rationality is out the door when we have anxiety or fear. And that's kind of why we have to either kind of joke about it and go, okay, let's put it in the gremlin and the gremlin's going to go away, or friend our inner critique and kind of just go there without much judgment. That's also another technique that I'm mentioning, which is just taking a minute to let your thoughts run through. So if you have negative thoughts, just kind of go, it's normal, it's okay, and just letting yourself feel it, and then eventually going back to more positive ones. And there's also a way of doing that, which is to reverse the adjectives you're using about yourself. So going from, I'm an idiot or something to I'm actually really smart. So reversing everything that you say about yourself in your head to something positive. And then, as I mentioned with the brain, you can actually visually, when having this knowledge, taking your dark thoughts or negative thoughts from the back of your brain to the front of your brain and kind of asking yourself, am I being logical or not right now? And there's a lot of other techniques. I could go on and on.
But these are just really simple, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're not difficult techniques. I think sometimes when we think about, healing, or when we think about techniques to help us, kind of get through things, we think that it's going to be a very, it must be very complicated or really complex. But a lot of these techniques aren't complex. Sometimes they may feel a bit difficult to do because, you're really wrapped up in the moment. But as you said, even just like kind of looking at it, and is it logical? Is it not? Is it real? And looking at it in a different way makes a massive difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think one song came up recently, and it was the Beatles' Let It Be.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Mm.
If we suffer from anxiety or something like it is what it is.
Mm.
Because sometimes we can't let go of those things. We can't let go. We feel like we should be doing and should be healing and should be getting over anxiety, depression, and all these things. But sometimes it's just to let it be and let the answers come through for themselves sometimes as well. Those are really amazing coping skills, because, those coping skills are super powerful in their own right. And I know you've got grounding techniques as well. You mentioned one, which was feet on the floor and feeling around your feet. And you also mentioned looking at objects around the room and saying the objects out, out loud. Well, not out too loud if people are bad.
Yeah.
I do. But yeah, techniques.
Yeah, like you said, it's I also kind of thought that, but it should be complicated techniques that are genius or something. And I mean, these are pretty interesting techniques created by quite smart people. And the fact that they are simple sometimes, you have to actually practice them, just like anything else. It seems very simple like that, kind of like what you said, but you have to practice it multiple times to get to a point where, okay, now I can, in a certain situation, use this technique, and in another situation, I'll be using this technique. And at first, when you start with one, sometimes it doesn't resonate with you, which is why I always provide my clients with multiple techniques. That way they can kind of try out which one resonates the most, because oftentimes, even when I just say the techniques, I can feel it. The person is like, not receptive to this one. And another person will be like, wow, this one really is great. Like, I wish I had heard about this before. So yeah, it's interesting. We're all different in that way. different things work on us. As for the grounding techniques, I always start my sessions with my clients with grounding techniques and end with grounding techniques. And again, simple. It's just a matter of recentering and kind of taking a break from all of those negative thoughts. And that's what's the hardest sometimes, to just sit there and take it all in. And so at the beginning of my sessions, we do body scans, where we go through our entire body to kind of tune into it, because trauma is not just stored in our minds. I think you would have even more to say about that probably, because you're very in tune with your body in your work and the bodies of others. And so, yeah, just tuning into your body. And just like yoga is a way to actually prepare to have meditation. So again, we start the session with the body. That way the person is more receptive to receiving what's coming in the mind, in a way. And then it's also breathing techniques to recenter. And often clients are kind of surprised to be able to just relax their entire system that way. And they're kind of like, well, I do a million things a day or something, or I'm thinking all of these thoughts, but I don't take the time to take a break and just relax. So yeah,
I think, you're so right, because a lot of people, even myself included, a lot of people come into session and they're not expecting to like kind of relax or anything. And there's a really great study on this as well. For what was I reading? Can't remember where it was now, but it was about tuning into your body when you're diabetic. And by tuning into your body, you can pinpoint as to when you're going to have when your insulin levels are changing. And that was the whole premise of it. And it just goes to show that the more that you tune into your body, like as you said, with breathing technique, with the feeling the floor under your feet, all these things, and just know it, and the body scan, just doing the scan and going, okay, pinpointing something, because we can all, whatever's going on in our lives, we can pinpoint it to an area in the body. It's situated somewhere, and it's usually situated in one of the muscles somewhere. And when you kind of tune in more, you then become even more grounded and more present with where you are. And that's what I love about what you're doing with the body scan, because just having that body scan allows someone to go, okay, I just feel something here, or a little bit more heavy in an area compared to somewhere else, or I might feel a dull ache or something. The body scans are so useful. And the breathing, what can I say about breathing? It's just the best. But sometimes it's really difficult for people just to kind of like switch off, isn't it? Especially because you're so used to going 100 miles an hour that it's just difficult, like, to kind of go, oh, I stop now. And it's like, what do I do?
Yeah.
You can almost see people going, really got to go do something. But that then comes to the art of allowing, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest part of it, actually, in life, is to kind of accept your feelings, accept the fact that some people are the way they are, some people will change, accept that some people did you wrong and that you did some people wrong. And I think acceptance and allowing, like you said, is a really important tool that we may realize after we've been through the worst. And obviously there are some things where it can be controversial, because are you supposed to accept someone who was violent towards you? You definitely shouldn't. But at the same time, we can't change the past. And so it's about forgiving, but not forgiving the person necessarily, forgiving yourself for having been with that person or having been through that, and kind of letting go of the guilt and the shame, and like you said, let it be, kind of, which is easier said than done. I realize that some woman who might be watching this kind of go, oh, this is a little much, but it's true. It's we have to find ways to kind of let go and realize that if we hold on to that, then we're just going to be miserable. If we hold on to the past and to things that hurt and people who hurt us, yeah, it's really a matter of singing the Frozen song in a way. So yeah. Or the Beatles song.
Otherwise, the only person who it's hurting is ourselves. And that's the thing. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to forgive the whatever. It's accepting that you're in a position that you don't want to forgive that person, because sometimes we can't accept certain things. And I think then it comes back to acceptance of forgiving ourselves for the way we feel, rather than the actual forgiving the other person bit. Because sometimes as human beings, we've been taught in such a way, conditioned in such a way, that if we feel anything other than happiness, so if we feel anger, jealousy, you're a bad person. Do you know what I mean? If you feel like, all these feelings which are perceived as being bad feelings, then you feel guilt and shame and you must be a bad person. But that's not necessarily the case, and that's why I love having conversations like this with you, with anyone else, because even like speaking to a client about jealousy, she goes, oh, I felt really bad because I felt jealous, and went, no, we need to have a conversation about how feeling jealous. It's okay, right? We all feel jealous at some point. We do feel it. We all feel emotions of anger. It's okay to say, I had that feeling. I felt this way. Because if we're not talking about the feeling, how can we heal from the feeling? How can we change mental health? If we're not enabling ourselves to talk about the way we truly feel about stress. And I think once we start having these conversations, we can then let go of the the shame, the guilt, the blame, all those things, because we can see things in a different way.
Absolutely.
That's my take on it, on anger and stuff like that, because it's good to have those conversations, because it takes the power away.
Exactly.
The power, because we both know this, the power that's held inside ourselves, and people be watching this right now, they'll be able to feel it somewhere within their body, and it's always in the stomach area. And it's just then working on taking that away. And as you said, with tracking it, with working through coping skills, and with grounding techniques, you can do so much. So this goes out on a Friday at 12:30. If, say, someone wanted to do something for the weekend, just to embody what they've learned from listening to this, what would be your key tip?
If they wanted to try one of these coping techniques? Well, most of us in the mental health world will say to do any exercise over 21 days. And at the same time, I would, like I do with my clients, actually recommend to try different exercises and see which one, again, works for you. And sometimes in different situations, I actually take several exercises from my toolbox and kind of go, for this situation, this is the tool that I need right now. So again, it's really up to you to see what works for you. And I think that's what coaching is actually all about. It's about empowering you to make your own choices that feel good for you. And on top of everything else we've said with the body and the coping techniques, it's a lot about hearing yourself. And the person in front of you kind of repeats back what you say, which acts as a mirror. And so you're able to hear yourself out loud and kind of realize some of the terrible things that you may be telling yourselves. And at the same time, I think what Trina and I have been discussing towards the end here is really about understanding that we are human. There is no person above or below. And literally, sometimes I just wonder, like, how do we get to this point? Because we all have been through difficult times. We all have been through mistakes. We have all hurt someone. There's no perfect or better person in that realm. And so it's really about destigmatizing that and realizing that when we're judging someone else, we're actually judging them based on how they vice differently. And vice is not really the word I would necessarily use, but it's true. It's like what people see it as vice, whereas actually they're doing just the same thing or something else, and it's just human. Like, we have, like we said, a range of emotions. We can feel anger, we can feel sadness, and in sadness and in anger there's a bunch of different other emotions there that need to be unpacked. And yeah, it's about accepting, allowing, and understanding that we're human. And I think that in itself is also kind of a major coping technique, to just tell yourself that it's normal. That's like half of the job I do. It's normal. Like, what you're experiencing is normal. Your thoughts are normal. The fact that we can have strange or negative thoughts is normal, and that we make mistakes, it's all normal. So yeah.
I love that, and that's what makes you so good at what you do. It really does. It makes you so good at what you do. And, and as I said, it's, having that conversation, and lessening those words, like, as you mentioned, judgment, anger, all those things, they all are going, I think, during this time, they're all going to come up, aren't they? They are going to, for their whole entirety. Going through those times, it's going to bring up a lot of stuff for a lot of people, I suppose. And working through those times, I think, working through those times can sometimes be difficult. But as we were saying, you were saying about the Frozen song, Let It Go. No, and it is true. It is true. I got to say thank you for being here. How does everyone get in contact with you?
Well, I have a website, chelseacoachcarter.com, and I also have an email. So they can send me an email there to chelseacoachcarter@gmail.com. And send me a message or an email.
Well, what I'll do is I'll pop your links on here as well, and make sure so people can get in contact with you, because it's very worthwhile. Chelsea knows her stuff. She's a great communicator. She's a wealth of experience, and with the amazing techniques, and she's got more techniques than this. So don't just think that these amazing techniques are just the only ones. Mm-hmm. She's got a plethora of techniques, so definitely get in contact with her, especially if you're suffering from PTSD, that you're having really intrusive thoughts, and that you're finding things really difficult. Because at this time, it's great to have a good coach on your side to help you get through and to help you manage during this moment. So I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you. And actually, I just wanted to quickly add on that, which is, we can see kind of anxiety techniques, or even in your work, if I see some of what you do, it's not the essence of it. Like, actually going through a session and talking to someone who kind of makes you feel like everything is fine again. And actually, you're the one making yourself feel that. Like, a coach is really just there to take you to that nice place again where you're your best self. And nothing really beats a session. Like, you can have tools out there or techniques, but actually unpacking everything else is even more important in order to get to that stage where you can use those tools and techniques.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you're so right. You are absolutely right, because, there's having someone like yourself enable someone to come in and just talk about what's going on in their life, because sometimes these things that we're holding in are the things that sometimes holding us back. So having someone like you, definitely get in contact with Chelsea, and we'll make sure that we'll pop her details above. But thank you so
Thank you, Trina.
Yeah.